Hello, this is Theolyn. Here I am again with mystical wisdom. And today's topic is writing. Now, writing is a very, very big topic, actually. So we're not going to cover it in the few minutes of one of my little videos that I make for you. But I want to bring your attention to some ancient ideas about writing, because some of the earliest records that have been kept by human beings using the earlier forms of script, cuneiform script is a special example, and hieroglyphs, of course, before the letters of the alphabet that we use nowadays. Some of those ancient records tell us that those people considered what was going on in the heavens to be a kind of heavenly script, a heavenly writing, and that they should be able to read what was in that writing and discover through that what they could do on earth or what might happen on earth. They could predict the future. And this, of course, was part of ancient astrology for many, many generations. And, until relatively recently, the idea of using astrology was in order to, quote, read the future. It wasn't until modern astrology in the last century that we started to think of astrology as more of a psychological tool and less predictive. But it has always had a predictive side to it, even in modern times. Because if you set up the chart for a child when it's born, what the parents are asking the astrologer is, how are things going to pan out for this child? So there's always been that element of prediction, although it was downplayed, especially in the 20th century. And of course, especially after psychological methods developed with Freud and Jung and various other great names, then we began to look at ourselves in a new way. We began to think perhaps it's not written in the stars who we are and who we can be. Something perhaps inside us might be written, but not outside us. And that's the main point of this particular video, is to consider how you feel about your purpose in life, how you feel about your future. Do you consult astrologers? Do you consult tarot cards, for example? Do you ask information from I Ching, for example? All these are divination systems. They are oracles. They can tell you something about what is going on, something that you might not notice otherwise. But does that necessarily mean that everything is predictive? Everything is, or predictable, I should say. Is it necessarily the case that you are going to meet a tall, dark, handsome stranger on Christmas Eve, whatever? So the issue of whether you've got any free will or agency in your life, whether you've got any creative power over the story arc of your own lifetime, or whether a certain amount of it has been, or even all of it, has been encapsulated at a certain point, and there's no escaping from it. Now, I've heard stories of the Indian Jyotish astrologers telling people some extraordinarily accurate things about their lives, which have made the Westerners come home really thinking again about, oh, well, maybe I haven't got the amount of choice about what's going to go on as I thought I had. And this also applies to the recent discoveries by Western astrologers of more traditional astrological systems. Not psychological systems, but systems that go back 2,000 years before Freud was born. And in those days, the astrologers definitely looked at the chart as a predictive tool. You will be born into this kind of family. You will experience these kind of things. And in the 30th year of your life, this will happen, and so on and so forth. And that brings up a big philosophical question, especially for people in the West, who for many generations, perhaps since the Renaissance in the 15th century, have considered that they are directing their own lives, not some stars or some gods in the stars. No, they're directing their lives for themselves. Why not? Why can't we be individuals who are making choices and our lives come out accordingly? Now, perhaps there's a combination. I don't think this is a compromise, but I think we could look at it as a combination of factors. Firstly, I myself believe, and this is from my own personal experience as well as my reading of old philosophical notions, especially Plato, that before we are actually born, we have made a certain amount of preemptive choices. We've made some considered evaluation of what we want to get done in our lifetime that we're about to be born into. So that there is some kind of, well, I call it a divine contract actually. There's some kind of writing. A contract would be written, wouldn't it? And there's some kind of plan, plot, if you like. Think of it as a story. And I've made that decision at a point before I was born. Then I get born, and in the process, I forget all about it, and I have to go around looking for clues. And the astrological chart can give me clues, as can other means of divination. And the reason they can give me clues is that they are inextricably tied up with who I am, especially the astrological birth chart, because I've arrived at a certain point in time and a record has been made of that and a chart has been written, and it says, Theolyn arrived at this time, on this date, in this place, and this is her chart. And I can look at that chart and say, now I can find out various things about what my previous, my pre-birth contract was about. So that's why an astrological chart is really useful for everybody. However, having made those choices before I was born, and having therefore arrived with a particular birth chart, that is not to say that there can't be some fine-tuning and sometimes potentially some dramatic changes to what's going on there. And in my own particular case, I had an event when I was 30, a particular spiritual illumination. And I recorded the time of that. It was in the month of June, so my birthday is in the month of April, so it was not near my birth date. And I have that chart, and I refer to that chart. Now, that chart obviously is, if I look back at the original chart when I was born, it's going to have some interesting synchronicities in it, no doubt. Nonetheless, I can say to myself, now, I feel as though that event was almost like a rebirth a reboot, perhaps. So I can look at that, and maybe there's some adjustment going on within my soul that wants to reformulate, recalibrate some of the considerations that I was making before I was born. And I think that's quite possible. And I think that people who go into near-death experiences can often feel the same way, that there's an opportunity for it's almost like reincarnation, but within the same living body. So you potentially get a new birth chart. And I think that that's something that occurs for some people. However, even if you have always going to work with the birth chart that happens when you were born to your mother all those years ago, nonetheless, within the framework of what that chart says, what is written, there are variations on the theme. And in the blog on the website that goes with this video, you will read me recounting the story of Lawrence of Arabia, at least from the movie. And I assume perhaps the movie was based on Lawrence's diaries and that this really happened. And there's a point where he turns back to find somebody who's been lost in the desert, and the Arabs with him say this is impossible. You cannot go back into the desert. It's a fiery furnace and you're just never going to come back again. So just leave that person to die. It is written, they say. It is the will of Allah. He will die. And, you shouldn't risk your own life just on a fool's errand. But Lawrence goes back and he rescues the man. And, of course, the Arabs, who already entranced by the charisma of this extraordinary Englishman, they are astounded by this. And one of them says to him, well, truly, for some people, nothing is written unless they write it for themselves. Right? So nothing is written unless you write it for yourself. And I would say you have written the outline of your story for yourself before you were born. And during this life, you can, do a bit of hither and thither with it. You can change a chapter here or a scene there, but the overall arc of your story is something that you've embedded, that you have written. And think about it. Choose your own adventure. Make sure that you follow a line that takes you to the end of the story. What is the resolution for the story that you're trying to tell? What are the twists and turns that can come about in order for that resolution to be satisfactory, so that you and other people around you are not left thinking, what was that all about? 5 out of 10, better luck next time. We don't want that. We want a satisfactory conclusion to our story. Think about what that would be for you. Think about what people might say standing round your tombstone at the end of your life, if you're going to have one, of course. So nothing is written except what you have started to write for yourself and what you are writing every day for yourself. And you can make those choices even though you have already set up a few parameters for the tale you want to tell. And it's not a tale full of sound and fury. No, it's a tale that you have carefully chosen, and you continue to choose it day by day. And you continue to believe in it, that your story will come out to your satisfaction, because you are writing it. Many blessings.